The ball is still climbing when everyone in the stadium already knows it sails over the crossbar, over the net, into the dark air above Al Bayt Stadium, and Harry Kane doesn't even turn to watch it land. 84 minutes into a World Cup quarterfinal, England's own captain has just put the equalizer over the bar. Not saved, not blocked, just gone. And a few yards away, France is one whistle from the semi-final. Kane sinks to his knees. Nobody touches him for a second. Then his teammates do, because someone has to. December 2022, Qatar. France go on to reach the final that year. England go home again, the way England so often go home against this exact opponent, in this exact kind of match. Close enough to touch, and then not quite. And in a few days, on July 18th, these two teams meet again. Not for a place in a final this time. For third place, the match nobody trains for, nobody wants, and both federations would rather skip if the format let them. So here's the question worth asking before that whistle blows. Why does a game for a bronze medal still carry any weight at all between these two specific countries? To answer that, you have to go back a lot further than Kane's penalty. Further back than football exists. Almost 1,000 years further, in fact, to the year an English throne was taken by a duke who didn't speak a word of English. 1066. Duke William of Normandy crosses the Channel, kills King Harold at Hastings with an arrow through the eye, and crowns himself King of England on Christmas Day. For the next 200 years, the kings of England speak French as their first language. Court records are kept in French. Nearly a third of the English vocabulary that exists today, words as basic as government, justice, beef, army, enters the language during this period, borrowed wholesale from Norman French. So, before there's a rivalry, there's this. England's own monarchy, its legal system, and thousands of its everyday words were built by Frenchmen. Whatever this relationship turns into later, it doesn't start as a fight between two foreign countries. It starts as a family argument, and family arguments, historians will tell you, tend to run hotter and last longer than anything you have with a stranger. The argument turns into open war in 1337. King Edward III of England, himself descended from that same Norman bloodline and the grandson of a French king through his mother, claims the crown of France when the direct male line of French kings runs out. France says no. England disagrees at length for the next 116 years. Historians call it the 100 Years' War, though it's really a long, broken string of wars with long pauses in between, fought over who actually gets to be French royalty. At Crécy in 1346 and Poitiers in 1356, English armies, badly outnumbered on paper, cut down French cavalry using the longbow, a weapon the French nobility had never taken seriously enough. At Poitiers, the King of France himself is captured and shipped to London as a prisoner. Then, in 1415 at Agincourt, it happens again, worse. Henry V's exhausted, outnumbered English force, trapped in mud after a long march, kills a staggering share of the French nobility in a single afternoon. Historian Juliet Barker, who has spent years reconstructing that battle from surviving records, has described it as less a battle than a slaughter of an entire generation of French aristocracy in the space of a few hours. France needed a miracle after Agincourt, and in 1429 they got one wearing armor and claiming to hear the voice of God. A teenage peasant girl named Joan of Arc convinces the French court she's been sent to save the country, leads an army to break the English siege of Orleans, and turns the war. She's 17. Within 2 years, she's captured, handed to English allied church authorities, tried for heresy in a court built to find her guilty, and burned at the stake in Rouen in 1431. Historian Helen Castor, who has written extensively on Joan's trial records, has pointed out that the transcripts read like a verdict decided before the questions were even asked. Joan becomes, within a generation, the most powerful national symbol France has, and she becomes that symbol specifically because England killed her. Modern French identity, in a very real sense, was partly forged in direct opposition to an English fire. France finally wins the war in 1453, England keeps one French port, Calais, as a leftover foothold until France takes that too in 1558. Queen Mary the Wreck of England is said to have remarked that when she died, the word Calais would be found engraved on her heart. Whether or not she said it exactly that way, the sentiment was real. After 5 centuries of entanglement, losing that last scrap of French soil felt to England like losing a piece of itself. You'd think that would be the end of it. It isn't close. Over the next 250 years, England and France fight each other on almost every continent that has people on it. Over colonies in Canada and India during the 7 Years' War, over control of the seas, over which country gets to call itself the dominant power in Europe. When American colonists rebel against British rule in the 1770s, France backs them. Not out of love for democracy, but because helping England lose a war has, by then, become something close to a French national pastime. Then comes Napoleon. France's own emperor spends years planning to invade England outright, an invasion that never actually launches. Admiral Nelson ends any real chance of it at Trafalgar in 1805, destroying the French and Spanish fleets and dying in the moment of victory. A decade later, at Waterloo in 1815, the Duke of Wellington, with Prussian reinforcements arriving just in time, ends Napoleon's run for good. By this point, each country has picked up an insult for the other that's still in use today. The French call the English les Rosbifs, the roast beefs. The English call the French frogs, after a national appetite for eating them. And the French coin a phrase for English foreign policy specifically, la perfide Albion. Perfidious Albion, a country in French eyes that will smile at you and stab you in the back the moment it's useful. Centuries later, people on both sides still use these words without knowing exactly where they came from. Even after the big wars stop, the near misses keep coming. In 1898, British and French forces both plant flags on the same remote fort in Sudan at a place called Fashoda, each claiming control of the Nile for their empire. For weeks, 2 of the most powerful militaries on Earth stare at each other over a stretch of African desert, and Europe genuinely wonders if this is the spark that finally starts a war neither government actually wants. It's resolved at a negotiating table instead of a battlefield, barely. Historians Robert and Isabel Toombs, a British-French husband and wife team who spent years writing what may be the definitive account of this entire relationship, gave their book a title that says almost everything, That Sweet Enemy. Their argument is that England and France have never simply hated each other. They've needed each other, copied each other, married into each other's royal families, and measured every part of themselves against the other country for so long that neither one can fully imagine itself without the comparison. And then, almost overnight, the enemies become allies. In 1904, Britain and France signed the Entente Cordiale, formally ending centuries of rivalry to face a new one, a rising Germany. They fight side by side in the trenches of the First World War, and again against the Nazis in the Second, though even that alliance isn't free of old scars. In 1940, fearing the French fleet might fall into German hands after France's surrender, the British Navy opens fire on its former allies' ships at Mers-el-Kébir, killing well over 1,000 French sailors in a matter of minutes. Allies, and still capable of that. Which brings the story finally to the part with a ball in it. Officially, England and France have played each other in football since the 1920s, and compared to England's fixtures against Germany or Argentina, or France's against Italy or Brazil, this one has always been treated on paper as almost friendly. That's part of what makes it strange. In 1966, on their way to winning their only World Cup, England beat France in the group stage at Wembley. In 1982, England beat France again at the World Cup, with Brian Robson scoring what was, at the time, the fastest goal in World Cup history, inside the first 30 seconds. Then, in 2004, at the European Championship, England lead France 1-0 deep into stoppage time, only to concede twice in the final minutes. A free kick and a penalty, both finished by Zinedine Zidane, and lose 2-1 in a collapse that still gets replayed on English television every time these two draw each other. French football journalist and historian Philippe Auclair, who has covered both nations' teams for decades, has written that matches like that one are exactly why neither country's fans ever quite believe the fixture is friendly, no matter what the federations call it. Which loops back to where this video started. Qatar 2022 quarterfinal, Harry Kane's penalty sailing over the bar in the 84th minute, France winning 2-1 and marching on to the final while England fly home. Another close call. Another one that got away. Now, it's July 18th, 2026, and after both nations were eliminated one step short of the final by other opponents, England and France line up across from each other again, this time for third place, the least romantic fixture in the sport. On paper, nothing is at stake but a medal nobody particularly wanted. In practice, given everything these two countries have been to each other since 1066, it was never really going to feel like nothing. Here's the part both countries would rather not say out loud. Ask an English fan who England's biggest rival is, and most will say Germany, or lately Argentina. Ask a French fan the same question, and most will say Germany too, or Italy, or Brazil. Almost nobody on either side names the other first. And maybe that's exactly the point. You don't call your oldest, most tangled relationship your rival the way you'd name a stranger. You save that word for someone you can still pretend not to know that well. England and France have shared kings, shared wars, shared a language, shared an empire's worth of enemies, and shared a scoreline or two that neither side has quite let go of. That isn't a rivalry between two foreign countries. It's closer to a family argument that's been running since before either country, in the modern sense, even existed. And the people inside a family argument are usually the last ones to admit that's what it is. So, when the whistle blows on July 18th, it won't be a final, and it won't decide anything either country's history books will remember. But somewhere in that stadium, whether either federation says it or not, will be the same two countries that have been finding new ways to almost beat each other for nearly 1,000 years. Still doing it, still denying it, the ball still climbing, the way it always seems to, right up until it clears the bar. This is what this channel does. It takes something as small as a penalty sailing over a crossbar and shows you the history and the psychology hiding underneath it. If that's the kind of story you want more of, follow the channel so you don't miss the next one. And if this one held your attention, leave a like.